I was glad when Sarah was finally ready to leave. By the time we made our way across town, I chugged the glass of water. I'm tired. I'm going to sleep. Are you okay? She asked. I'm fine. Night. Sarah, good night, she said, her voice uneasy. I was feeling a bit more sober. I left for my room. The next day was unremarkable, at least until I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown, hey, it's Dan. Remember meeting me last night? Me. Yes. I do. Unknown. Want to grab a coffee sometime? But not more clear-minded. I stared at the screen and considered his offer. If Sarah was right, he was a vampire. But he had seemed decent enough. The hunters had lied to me about any number of things, like how werewolves were all brutal animals, when they weren't. They had just as likely been wrong about vampires. Too, it wouldn't hurt to give him a chance. Surely. My head was still swirling with my conversation with the woman in the washroom as we tromped into our apartment. I didn't think my good impression of him was wrong, but even if so, what could he do to me in a public place? Me? Yes. And sure, unknown. How does Midnight Cafe at 3 p.m. sound? I considered Sarah would be horrified at the thought of me meeting him anywhere, especially in a place he chose that sounded every bit like a stereotypical, sketchy vampire hangout. Still, I had deliberately left him. The time sounded good because Sarah had plans so she wouldn't be able to fret or nag me. Why should she get to determine who I spent my time with? I would leave a note, though, just in case I ended up drained, dry, and tossed in a ditch somewhere. She could put "I told you so" on my headstone. I searched the address and it was about halfway between my place and the bar where we'd met, close enough to walk. Me. Yeah, all right, I'll meet you there. But had that been the wrong thing to do? He probably hated me now. Unknown. Great. See you then. I had a couple of hours to get ready. I pushed aside some silly guilt since I wasn't doing anything wrong and went about my day. I took an Uber to the location, and when I got out, I inspected the building. From the outside, it looked like any coffee shop I might have seen in the movies, not at all like a trap to lure in unsuspecting prey for vampires. Or would he? Although, would a vampire trap that looked like it was even be effective for finding them victims? If I were a vampire, I would totally lurk around cute bookstores and coffee shops. Gathering my courage, I pushed into the door and immediately spotted Dan sitting at a table. It wasn't hard to pick him out since there were only a couple other patrons in the open space to the side of the counter. I walked over and returned the smile he shot me. I took a seat across from him. I hope you weren't waiting long, I said. Sarah was wandering around the kitchen and ran herself a glass of water. Not long at all, he said. I actually live upstairs, so I just got down here. I smiled and wondered if I should be worried. Since I was so conveniently close to a vampire's inner lair, I considered dropping my location to Sarah just in case, but I decided the note was good enough. If I wasn't home in a couple of hours, Sarah would be, that guy is bad news, and she'd know where I was. Besides, it was during the day, and from what I had picked up from my days with the hunters, vampires were barely stronger than humans when the sun was up. Unlike the vampire fiction I had watched while trapped at the pack and in my spare time with Sarah, the sun did not kill them, but it did render them as defenseless as humans. Meaning, right now, I pulled my mind away from the alpha. Dan wasn't really much stronger than a random human man. So, what do you want? My treat? He passed me a menu. I considered arguing, but I decided to take him up on it. I skimmed the selections and pointed out what I wanted. Hey, Lydia. He called in a tone that had the soft edge of a request on it. Her friends decided to make their own ways home. She couldn't have been talking about him. Can I get 2 number 4s? A Danish and a raspberry twist? A sharp-faced, black-haired woman poked her head out of the back. Sure thing. Dan, coming right up. You like lats? 2? I asked. Who doesn't? Right? What? We sort of chuckled. The one who you gave your number to? Amber? Sarah said, sounding slightly exasperated. I had nearly forgotten about him. My thoughts all centered on someone else. Why is that? He's a vampire. And we jumped in an Uber together. Didn't the hunters teach you anything? Very little. Mostly how to do chores and act as invisible as possible. Oh, and the glorious destiny of the hunters, they were big on that one. Well, he smelled like nothing, and he was creepily quiet and steady. Definitely a vampire. My mind was a dizzy mess from the alcohol buildup. My liver was struggling to process. I shrugged. He seemed nice enough. She scoffed. You talked to him for like 3 seconds. Yeah, because you came and scared him off. If I hadn't, he'd probably be sucking you dry right now. I scowled. I wasn't going to go with him anywhere. Sarah talked to the cabbie and she chatted with me enthusiastically. She filled another glass of water and set it down in front of me. I know that, but you're a human. You've got no resistance to his sort. He could have done anything he wanted to you. They can use compulsion on the weak. I don't think he was threatening me. I am allowed to talk to whoever I want, aren't I? I watched her carefully to gauge her reaction. She frowned, but my answers were half-hearted. Of course you are, but... She trailed off with a sigh. Just promise me you'll be careful. Your well-being doesn't only affect yourself. You know, no, I don't, I said stubbornly. Was she implying what I thought she was implying? We never talked about them. I still had questions that I could not figure out how to put into words. And again, I questioned whether she was my friend at all or just a sentry on watch duty. She looked like she did not want to bring it up, and I stared her down. Finally, she relented. I don't want to pressure you, but if something happens to you, my cousin won't take it well. And there it was. So, even if I could, that's the only reason you're here. Then, I couldn't help but feel hurt. She acted so genuinely friendly, but was it all an act? She looked like a deer caught in headlights, completely unprepared, as if the question hadn't been hanging between us during the months we'd been in the human world. No, of course not. I came to support you. I already knew Sarah's take on her cousin, and also because I wanted some time to explore away from the pack. She hesitated and then added, it's probably the reason he allowed it so easily. Though, and there it was, a reminder that the pack and the alpha and my bond to him were just another cage. Like the rule of the hunters, I didn't want that. Even if the ridiculous connection was trying to pull me back towards him, it was the perfect reminder that the way he kept invading my dreams and the way that I missed him was all a part of the oppressive bond between us. A bond neither of us had asked for, but then a long moment of slightly awkward silence stretched between us. I debated telling him straight out that I knew what he was, but with other humans in the cafe, it was probably unwise. If he was the nice guy I thought he was, I did not want to out him to the humans around, or just as likely out myself as appearing crazy. In my time amongst them, the mundane humans of the world never seemed to expect the supernatural hiding in plain sight. So, what do you do now that you're in the city? He finally asked. Nothing too exciting. I said, I just work at a place kind of like this. He grinned. I help out around here sometimes, so I guess that gives us something in common. Really? I hadn't imagined that a vampire ever might work a coffee bar. I wondered if Lydia was also a vampire. Yeah, as if he could read my mind, he added, Lydia's my cousin, so I don't mind lending a hand when she's short-staffed from time to time. I was surprised they were cousins. They were both attractive in their own ways. Madame was blonde and fair, whereas Lydia had a swarthier complexion. Oh, must be nice to live with family. What else do you do? I teach 7th and 8th grade. I'll bet that's hard. Tell me about it. They're monsters at that age. You don't look old enough to be a teacher. I commented innocently. He shrugged. I get that a lot. I've apparently got a bit of a baby face, but I can assure you that I am more than old enough. I believe you. Lydia brought out our order, and I blew on the top of my latte as I glanced across the table at Dan, trying to figure out exactly what it was that had tipped Sarah off as to his nature. He was certainly handsome and fit. He hadn't flashed his teeth wide enough for me to see his fangs, but I had no doubt they were there. Sarah was a lot of things, but I was still pretty sure she wasn't subtle enough to be a manipulative liar. He took a sip of his own drink. You've outdone yourself again. Lydia, she chuckled. And Joy, you too. One of the other patrons left, leaving only Dan and I and one other oblivious human. Something about having Lydia there helped me relax. She seemed as nice as Dan, even if she was probably also a vampire. We talked about inane topics for a while, and I actually enjoyed myself. My anxiety increased slightly when the other human left, but Dan didn't act differently now that we were alone. Like he didn't even notice they were gone. My phone pinged several times, and I glanced at him apologetically. Sorry, I've got to check this, I said, pulling out the device only to discover that I had run out of time. Sarah, you went out with the vampire? What were you thinking? You can't defend yourself against that sort of power. Sarah, I'm coming there right now. Me? No. Don't bother. It's daytime right now, and nothing has happened. We're drinking lattes, and he's telling me about the city. Me. Vampires are weak at this time of day. Sarah, a regular human could probably take you at any time of the day. I'm on my way. Me. No. I'll text if I need you. Sarah. Amber. Please. Me? I said no. Unless you want to prove that I really am still just a captive. Sarah. You're not. Me. Then leave it alone. Sarah. Fine. But at least text me you're alive, periodically. Me. Fine. I'm alive. If it would get her off my back, I would do it. I glanced across at Dan again. Sorry about that. My friend just found the note I left her and she's busy worrying about me. Overprotective friends. I glanced around. There was no one in the cafe, and Lydia was somewhere in the back. So I decided to simply ask him straight out, yeah, well, she happens to think you're a vampire. He paused and glanced at me. Oh? What makes her say that? I wasn't going to tell him that she was a werewolf. So I shrugged. I think she just has a feel for those things. He smiled a bit and looked at me in a very determined way that made me uneasy. Are you saying you believe her? Yeah, I kinda do. I watched him warily, and my old instinctive desire to make myself look small and submissive to avoid trouble surged within me. I tried to hold the feeling off, but I cringed as his eyes bored down into mine, and I feared that I had made a terrible mistake. Dan stared at me, and I lowered my gaze so that he wouldn't think I was challenging him. So I was startled when he started laughing uproariously, as if I had said something hilarious. He spoke between laughs. You believe that I'm a vampire, but you still met me for coffee. What were you thinking? I shrugged. I thought you seemed okay. So I decided to give you a chance. I did not tell him that part of it was to prove to myself that I really could do what I wanted with my life. And maybe a part of it was rebellion against the misery of my childhood. I could hang out with a vampire if I wanted to. Forget the hunters and all their anti-supernatural propaganda. I shrugged. Also, forget the overprotective werewolves and the mate bond that I could not quite seem to escape. I didn't meet his eyes, but I did summon my courage to ask, are you not a vampire? What are you? Then, his chuckling finally stopped. Sorry for laughing, but I was not expecting that. And yes, I am a vampire. He flashed me a grin, and I saw his sharp fangs clearly for the first time. I scrambled to think of something to say to him. Now that I had confirmation, it was just strange. He smiled. Usually when I ask out a pretty girl on a date, I have to worry about if and when I'll tell her about what I am. I've never had someone ask me point blank before. This is a date? Only if you want it to be. It's definitely interesting, if nothing else. But now, I'm even more curious about you. You're so matter-of-fact about this. I can't believe you're a normal human. Although you seem like a normal human, you don't smell as appetizing as the Fae or as unpleasant as a werewolf. I can't detect anything other about you. I wasn't going to expose the pack, but maybe it might be good to talk about my past with someone unrelated, someone I could tell the partial truth to. There was an odd lack of pressure here with this vampire, like he was someone I could connect with. So I threw caution to the wind. I am a normal human, but I was found and raised by hunters. His eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. So I quickly added, don't worry, though they treated me like an unpaid servant and taught me nothing useful. I couldn't hurt you if I tried, or maybe telling him how helpless I was had been a foolish move. Just because acting weak had helped me with the hunters, His frown deepened, as if he sensed the deeper truth behind my words. Then his face relaxed. Well, I won't hold it against you. Good to hear, because my life with them was miserable. All the more reason the hunters are the problem. That's not how they tell it. I can imagine not. So what are you doing here in the city? Well, I eventually got away from the hunters, and I'm trying to make a life free among the normal humans. And is that life of freedom satisfying you? It was a good question. I liked making my own decisions without the fear of Jasper's attention or Mrs. Linden's wrath, but I was haunted by memories of a face that I left behind. If it weren't for that, I thought it might be, yes, for now, I'm learning to live the life they tried to steal from me. That's good to hear. You know, my queen would be interested in meeting you. Meeting me? I repeated, surprised. Yes, she's long been trying to rally the other supernatural creatures to stand against the hunters with little luck. Perhaps your story of ill treatment would shed more light on the threat. Ill treatment? Forgive me, but I can read between the lines. They set themselves up as the virtuous protectors of humanity, keeping the monsters at bay, and yet they neglected one human girl in their care. Well, that was mostly the family I was stuck with. I said, I wasn't sure I wanted to get drawn in as a pawn in any conflicts. Meeting the queen of the vampires was the direct opposite of what I had been aiming for. I hadn't forgotten my goal. Hiding anonymously among the humans. Who was it who stuck you with that family? Did the other hunters not stand by while you were not cared for? He was hitting too close to home. I inhaled. Some probably knew, but I'm sure many were oblivious. Probably all hunters aren't bad, and I don't want to see the children harmed. Dan shook his head. Contrary to what the hunters may have told you, vampires are not entirely without mercy, at least not the ones who follow the laws. I believe that, but can't you understand? I just want to escape that world. And yet you told me about your past at the earliest opportunity. Maybe it's impossible to close your eyes to what you know and just be an oblivious human again. Even if you want to, not without magical suppression. And I don't recommend that. I'll think about talking to your queen. No promises. Of course, I've no desire to bully you. Our queen would take a very grim view of that. She sounds. My phone pinged again and I rolled my eyes. Sarah was busy worrying. Now that I was pretty sure Dan wasn't going to drain me dry, I regretted leaving the note at all. I didn't just want to be close to Sarah sanctioned people. I've had a good time, but I should probably get home. Sarah's bouncing off the walls. I glanced at my screen. She wants to meet you properly. I'd be happy to meet her. If it will set her mind at ease. I quickly texted Sarah that she could come pick me up and talk to Dan when she did. Her response was immediate. She'll be here in a few. He said I was tired of the overprotectiveness, but it would grate on my nerves less if I could be sure it was genuine. He grinned, seeming perfectly at ease. I wondered if he would be so relaxed if he knew what she was. Werewolves and vampires were technically at peace, but there had been conflicts between them in the past, which had led to the accords with the hunters appointed as mediators and enforcers. You've sure brought a lot of drama into my place. Dan, Lydia commented mildly from behind the counter. Maybe we should close up shop for your little confrontation. I didn't want to trouble her. You don't have to. Probably a good idea. Dan agreed. I was overruled. But I didn't think that it was worth arguing. If Dan was going to be my friend, it was probably a good idea to just let Sarah get her frustrations out and be done with it. It wouldn't be a very productive conversation if a normal human came in so they couldn't really talk. Lydia closed up the coffee shop temporarily, assuring me that it wasn't that big of a deal because the shop was just a hobby. Dan and I chatted, but it was one of those uneasy conversations people have when they're just taking up time while waiting. Finally, there was an impatient knock on the door right below the closed sign, and Sarah's irritated face looked at me through the glass. Well, this was going to be fun. Dan opened the door and smiled, his friendly smile. Hello, Sarah, is it? Sarah shot me an extremely unimpressed expression. How was I supposed to know her first name was top secret? Nice to see you again. Dan, she responded in a tone that said exactly the opposite. He cringed. Surprised you're happy to see a vampire? Honestly, She narrowed her eyes. Oh, so you're just laying it out there? It's not much of a secret. From what I hear, why don't you take a seat? She shot me another incredulous expression as she took the spot beside me. Dan sat down directly across from me as well, so it was like I was caught between two warring factions. He looked towards her and asked in an overly solicitous tone, "Would you like something to drink?" "No thanks." "So, I heard you were interested in meeting me?" "I am." "Yes, I want to know what your interest in Amber is." He chuckled. "Well, I don't intend to use her as an unwilling snack. If that's what's concerning you," Sarah glared. "That's one of the things that concern me." He raised an eyebrow. Sarah crossed her arms. "She's very innocent and inexperienced. She's new to this world, and I don't want her to be taken advantage of. You know, I'm right here." "Sarah," I pointed out, "I didn't need her to speak for me. I think you're capable of speaking for yourself." Dan commented, apparently not missing my reaction. I agreed. Then I turned to my friend, "And if you're just here to be his overprotective minion, I'm not here because of that." She said, looking even more irritated, "Did you tell this bloodsucker all about him, too?" "No, I said nothing about that." Dan looked even more curious. He was watching Sarah. "Then are you a werewolf?" "You're definitely not a fairy. I'd stake my life on it." "That's none of your concern. You know, Her Majesty has a peace treaty with your Alpha Assembly, so I don't see what the issue is here. We're all legal and law-abiding, right? Unless you're a rogue." "Sarah, but I think not. You've got pack written all over you." "Fine, I'm a werewolf. And what's your relation with this human?" "She's my friend, and I look out for her, yet you're far from your pack. So you think, I know for a fact there are no packs in this area. There are only a few urban packs on the continent, and this land is unclaimed. This is vampire country." She groaned and cast me a weary look, as if asking why I'd chosen this particular city. I wasn't about to feel guilty, since I hadn't made her come with me. She was the one adamant about sticking to me like glue. He smiled. "You're here watching over a human, so it was obvious to him, too." It made all my other concerns about my relationship or lack of a real one with Sarah seem more valid. He was watching her carefully. "Is Amber your mate?" "What? No offense." "Amber. Known taken." I muttered. It wasn't like I was interested in her either. "Then you're watching her for someone. Let me guess. Poor Amber got saddled with an overprotective, high-ranking member of your pack, and now you're on a mission to ensure she doesn't get hurt while she gets to pretend she's actually free from the supernatural world." "What? It's not like that at all." Sarah shot Dan a death glare. "I volunteered to go with Amber because I wanted to see the world." Dan raised his eyebrows. "And yet you're here, interviewing me to see if she's allowed to associate with a terrifying vampire?" Sarah narrowed her eyes. "If you started sniffing around my other human friends instead, I would have done this exact same thing." "How noble of you." As I watched the confrontation, I couldn't help but agree with Dan, even though I felt guilty, like I was betraying Sarah and the Alpha with my thoughts. I reminded myself that I didn't owe him anything, not because of a mate bond I had no say over. "I didn't come here to explain myself to you," Sarah said. "I want to know why you're bothering Amber." "He's not bothering me," I interjected. Amber was sitting alone in the club, and I thought she looked cute and a bit forlorn. So I decided to be nice and strike up a conversation, and I found Amber was enjoyable to talk to. Simple as that. He shot me an apologetic glance, and I believe the feeling is mutual on enjoyable to talk to, although we'd have to ask Amber for her opinion because she seems fully capable of forming her own. Sarah glanced at me, as if reminded I was there. "I do like talking with Dan. I can speak freely and we have things in common." Sarah huffed. "You're set on being friends with him then?" "I think I am. I don't have much in common with the humans around here." She cast Dan a dark look. "There's nothing I can do about this, sadly, but I will say, if anything happens to Amber under your care, it isn't only my wrath you'll need to deal with. I can take care of myself." I muttered. We usually got along well, but Sarah's second-hand overprotectiveness was getting out of hand. "I've no intention of bringing harm to Amber in any way." Dan said, "Good." Sarah looked towards me. Are you ready to come home now? I considered resisting just to make a point, but I had told her I was ready to go. Yes. I looked towards Dan and deliberately said to make my point. I'll text you later. Sounds good, he said as Sarah got up. I followed, and with a little wave towards Dan, I left the coffee shop. Greta lent me her car. She told me as we walked towards the little vehicle, that was nice of her. I don't know why you need a vampire to be friends with. I really don't. She complained, we've got perfectly good friends already. You've got perfectly good friends already. I just sort of orbit around you. What? You don't like them? I like them. They're nice, but I'm not close to them. I thought I'd be able to fit in around the normal humans, but it seems like I don't fit in anywhere. I wasn't sure I was explaining what I meant properly. I don't know what it is that I like about Dan, but I do like him. He's the first person I felt comfortable with other than you or Oliver since I tried to remember the last person I had felt comfortable with. There had been moments with Alpha Devon, and before that, I couldn't think of anyone. There'd been rare moments of kindness from the other hunters, or maybe even Jesse wasn't awful occasionally, but it had never been enough to offset the misery I experienced. She nodded. Well, he seemed civil enough. I don't think he'd dare start something with the werewolves when there are treaties with the vampire queen. I pointed out I didn't believe he was going to do anything bad to me either way, but she'd find this argument more convincing. She sighed. It's not like I don't trust you, but vampires are so, I don't know, they're unpredictable. I just want you to be safe, and I know you think it's because of my cousin, but I'd feel this way even if you weren't his mate. I mean, of course I do think about what would happen to him if you died or something, but I don't want you to get sucked dry by a vampire and left to rot because it would devastate me. You've never really gotten a chance to live your life, and I think you deserve that much. At least, I really don't think Dan or Lydia for that matter seem like the suck dry and dump a body type. Dan told me the royal laws are pretty strict about how they have to treat humans, and who is Lydia? You know another vampire? She looked horrified at the thought. Yeah, it's her coffee shop. I didn't even know there was another vampire there. She looked disgusted, but I wasn't sure if it was because of the fact she'd failed to notice or because of more vampires in general. Really, they don't smell like much, so they're hard to detect. They move eerily, silently, to like they were designed to get past werewolf defenses. I didn't know that. I knew they're fast and strong, but the hunters were more focused on how monstrously evil they were whenever Sigmund Trist gave his rousing speeches. You know Sigmund Trist? She asked, looking surprised. Uh, I mean, I know him to see him, and I was forced to listen to him speak whenever there was a public gathering. But know him? Not really. I doubt he could even pick me out in a crowd. I'm more surprised, of him. He's infamous for his kills. He's not the top guy in the hunters, from what we can tell, but he seems to be a bit of a figurehead of an enforcer. He was the leader of the group I grew up with. I decided to tell her more about my new friend. Dan thought his queen would be interested in speaking with me. What? He figured my tale of woe could be used as a rallying cry. He's probably not wrong, but you should stay away from the vampire queen. From what I hear, she's been obsessed with starting a war against the hunters for longer than we've been alive. I'm surprised that you werewolves wouldn't want a war. Don't you hate the hunters? Sarah shrugged. All I know is there isn't a lot of support for standing up to them from the other packs. Our pack has lost more than most, and not just people. They had official excuses to take. Well, I told Dan I would think about it, but I don't think I'll do it. It wouldn't really help with my fit in amongst the regular humans plan. Because that's going so well, what do you mean by that? Dan had made a similar point. Maybe they were both right. I was terrible at pretending to be a regular human. I just couldn't seem to get close to them without Sarah's assistance. I didn't know how she did it, because I just couldn't detach from the lies it took to keep them oblivious. How did you get close to people when you couldn't be honest? You're set on making friends with a vampire, and you live with a werewolf. That wasn't on my fault. A werewolf lives with me, and I'm not set on it. I just like him. In a romantic sense? She asked, a distinct note of censure in her voice. Don't even start with me. I didn't think I felt that way, but she needed to keep her nose out of my business. I'm sorry. I just want what's best for you. She said, or Alpha Devon? Both of you. Actually, you'll never find someone more devoted to you than he would be. I exhaled, because werewolf instinct forces him to be, is not just that, it's the pull to someone compatible, and then things progress from there. Most werewolf couples end up living happily together after they get all their drama and pride out of the way. There was a wistful note in her voice. Maybe she'd grown up with fairy tales about happily ever after. But I hadn't been so lucky. No one had tucked me in with sweet stories like the good parents did on television. I'm not talking about this anymore. Sometimes I thought I felt the pull towards him, too, especially when I woke up from dreams about him. But the idea that it was the bond controlling my mind made me feel cornered and powerless. I didn't like it. I didn't want some impersonal fate. The door stood there with his nameplate in gold, or some interfering goddess to choose my destiny for me. Okay, I'm sorry. I just don't want that vampire or my cousin to come between us. I nodded. I don't want that either. Just let me make my own choices. And everything is fine between us. I picked up my glass and tilted what was left of the golden liquid into my mouth. I could barely taste the dry flavor of the magically enhanced whiskey, much like I could barely register the colors in the office around me. Everything was dull and meaningless. Picking up the next paper on my desk, I forced myself to focus on the words printed on the page. It was relating to the function Megan was planning. I'd given my permission, but I'd heard very little about the mate ball since Amber had left me. I glanced at the date and realized that it was set for tomorrow. How had it snuck up on me like this? No one had directly mentioned it to me. My brother, Megan, and basically everyone else in the pack were all tiptoeing around me. And why not? My wolf was unpredictable, and my control was worse than it had ever been. Worse even than when I'd been a cocky adolescent with an abnormally strong wolf undergoing the ravages of puberty. There had been plenty of mishaps back then, but no one had been relying on me then. They shouldn't be relying on me now. I couldn't focus. I couldn't function. I was a failure as an alpha, just as much as I was a failure as a mate. My wolf chose that moment to rouse himself, tempting me with all the things I could be doing, instead of sitting here in my office while trying and failing to keep it all together. It wouldn't be difficult to find out where she had gone. I'd placed Oliver in charge of handling any of Sarah's additional needs and expenses but one quick alpha command, and he'd have no choice but to tell me where they were staying. Hell, 5 minutes alone in his office, and I could probably have the address in my hands. 20 minutes later, I could be on the road, heading towards her. I'd get there, find that tantalizing scent that my wolf would never forget, and follow the trail straight to her. Then, it would all depend on her reaction. If she were happy to see me, I would woo her. If I knew it would go that way, I'd already be on my way. The problem was that I wasn't sure what she would do. If she wasn't happy to see me, I didn't know what my wolf would respond to. More rejection. As upset as he was, maybe I'd drag her back to Marrowcliff and never allow her leave again, no matter what she wanted. Maybe my wolf would rampage through the human city and be put down by hunters for exposing the supernatural. Maybe my wolf would overpower me and mark her against her will. None of those outcomes were acceptable. My wolf loved the repugnant idea of marking and carrying her off. I truly was a monster. But instead of getting up and snooping around Oliver's office like I was sorely tempted to do, I just poured another drink. Hours later, I woke up on the couch beside the bookshelf in my office. A glance at my father's clock told me it was already past 9 in the morning. I had no memory of how I ended up here, but it didn't take a genius to figure out that I'd spent another night drinking at my desk before crashing on the closest spot. My father had always kept a couch in here when this office had been his, and I'd copied the habit, but I was pretty sure that hadn't been for his convenience in passing out drunk like I'd been doing. I miss my father and mother even after all this time, but a dark side of me was relieved that they weren't here to see how far I had fallen. What a disappointment I had turned out to be. I pushed up from where I lay. My head throbbed and my neck ached from sleeping in an uncomfortable cramped position. Making my way out the door towards the kitchen, I grabbed something to eat that was left over from breakfast. My sensitive ears picked up an excess of excited chatter, and I could feel the same sentiment, like a heady thrum through the bond with my pack. There were a lot of wolves looking forward to the possibility of finding their mates. They were all so hopeful. How I envied them, their optimism. The future was full of potential My potential had already been exhausted. All my possibilities were far more negative. My wolf pushed at me to make them reality, repressing my instincts yet again. I got ready to go for a run. Our patrols would be pushed to the limit this night, so it was a good time for me to take a turn. With so many wolves from other packs on my territory, and many of our fighters also taking part in the festivities, my wolf would be agitated enough with so many possible threats on our land, so he needed to wear off some energy. I left my already rumpled clothing in a pile at the edge of the forest and shifted into my fur. I never let my wolf have full control anymore because he was too unstable. He couldn't be trusted, not even with the pack, because of his constant frustration. I ran through the forest to the edge of my territory and kept my senses sharp for any hints of real threats. I almost wished to encounter a feral rogue, or better yet, a hunter, someone who I could take out my simmering aggression on. If I found hunters, I'd drag them back and show them what it was like to be a prisoner of an angry werewolf. I'd torture them until they told me where Sylvia was being held, and every other detail of hunter society that could be recalled. Gone were the days when Marrowcliff respected hunters as enforcers. They were only enemies, even if most of the other members of the Alpha Assembly refused to see the truth. Fortunately, and to my disappointment, I found no threats. I came back as agitated as ever, full of emotion. I had no way of expelling. I'd have to keep myself well away from the mate ball this night as much as possible. I could only imagine the trouble I'd have to deal with if I inadvertently lost my cool on some cocky young wolf from an allied pack. I dressed and returned to the pack house. I might as well try to get some more work done. The door of the pack house opened before I reached it. Megan and a few other pack members came out, chattering about their various tasks. "Hey, Alpha Devon," Megan greeted me, and the others echoed her. She smiled brightly, but it quickly faded to concern when she looked at me. I must have looked as bad as I felt. I pretended I hadn't noticed her reaction. "Hello, ladies." My response was flat. Even though I had tried to sound friendly, they were probably on their way to make sure everything was ready for the festivities, heading off to the hall. "Yes," she said, "everything seemed to be going smoothly, but we want to make sure we haven't missed anything. Having members of 6 different packs here at once is a pretty big organizational challenge. I have full confidence in all of you." They smiled at that. Reminding my pack that I had faith in them was something my father had considered important. A pack ran best when everyone knew they were necessary and felt included. Every wolf had an important place, even if it was sometimes difficult to determine where that might be. I was such a fraud, pretending to live up to my father when I wasn't doing the job as well as he had. "Thanks, Alpha Devon," Megan said, and she smiled as they walked away. She'd put her heart and soul into organizing the gathering and had thrived under the challenge. I desperately hoped that she would find her mate tonight. Even back when we'd been together, there'd been no pretense between us. We had both known it was a cold comfort, a poor replacement for what we both truly wanted. I'd rather have a minute of Amber's time than a lifetime with anyone else. I missed her so much. Wolves were rolling into my territory, and I maintained the bare minimum of contact to be civil, speaking largely to the ranking members who had come along from their packs before retreating from the hordes of females who looked at me like they wished I was their mate, or even that I would take them as a chosen mate. I didn't want any of them. Even in the short time I acted the host, twice I witnessed 2 wolves find each other, and both times I could barely hide my jealousy and resentment. Why couldn't my mate have been another werewolf who had been looking for me? If Amber had been from one of these packs with this attitude, she'd already be Luna, maybe even pregnant with Marrowcliff's heir. Instead of abandoning me to run around the human world on a search for freedom, it was a relief to get back to the pack house. I decided to work, since it was further from where the guests were staying, and I didn't want to risk running into any of the new happy couples. I should have rejected Amber before she left. My wolf raged in my mind at the thought and pushed me in the direction of Oliver's office again. A weak defense against what I wanted to find. Her location was right behind that door, so easily accessible. Even if I didn't have the key, it wouldn't be a match against the strength of my desperate wolf. A tiny peek later, and I could be on my way to her, to do what needed to be done. I leaned my arm against the door and talked myself down. But my wolf didn't want to follow Amber, to reject her in a civil manner. He wanted to chase her down and make her ours, regardless of her thoughts about the situation. I didn't let her go just to hunt her down and forcibly mark her. I let her go to give her the freedom she wanted because that was what she wanted. She wanted freedom, not me. I should have done it before. Maybe then I'd be at that mate ball and maybe even find my second chance, but was a weak coward who wasn't strong enough to face her before she left. And now that my wolf was increasingly unstable, the risk was too high. I had to stay away. Pushing away from my brother's office, I continued down towards my own, unlocking and relocking the door behind me. I didn't want to be disturbed. My ranked wolves were either at the ball themselves or on duty, and they would let me know if there was an actual concern that required my attention. Sitting at my desk, I pulled out my phone and texted Sarah, Devon, how is she doing? Sarah, she's doing fine. Devon, tell me more. Sarah, she's safe. Seems happy enough. Devon, specifics. Sarah, I told you I wasn't going to spy on her. If she wants you to know what she's doing, she'll let you know. When she's ready, you've just got to be patient. I can't push her because it just gets her back up. And she already doubts my sincerity. And she really doesn't like being told what to do. So if you want me to start sabotaging my friendship with Amber until she won't even tolerate me anymore and leaves on her own, just let me know. I rested my head in my hands. This would never have worked if Sarah weren't so strong-minded. I would have bullied anyone else into violating her wishes. And at least this way, I knew that Amber was safe. I texted her back, Devon, no. Of course not. I trust you know what you're doing. Sarah, sorry. I know it's hard for you. Devon, I'm fine. Sarah, K. Devon, happy belated birthday. By the way, Sarah, haha, thanks. It was fun. I set the phone down, got a drink, and started working again. Amber, the world was hazy around me as I was running through the forest, the wind rushing through my fur, and Alpha Devon beside me. He was a monstrous wolf, but the thought of his terrifying power actually made me feel safe, because he would never use it against me. Only in service to me, we stopped by a river, and I lay beside him. He was warm and solid. I miss you. I told him, I miss you, too, but I'll never leave you. We lay there for a long moment in silence, only the chirps of crickets and the call of night birds breaking the stillness between us. I'm the one who left you. I reminded him, why had I done that again? I know. Do you hate me? He didn't answer. He wasn't even there. I woke up on the verge of tears. This was ridiculous. There had been nothing between us, nothing but a bond that neither of us chose. But it didn't feel like nothing. Not in these moments before these haunting dreams faded. I got up and took a shower, but the gloom clung to me like a stain that would not wash off. Sarah had plans to go out shopping with her friends, and she had invited me along. I had refused. Maybe I preferred to stay alone, wrapped up in my own misery. Once she left, I texted Dan and made plans to meet him in a park within walking distance of my house. I left early so I could sit and enjoy the trees. It wasn't quite like the wild places for bringing comfort, but it was better than nothing. I watched the city around me as I walked. Maybe it was this place that was the problem. Maybe I should have gone to some remote rural community and worked to buy some land, maybe a farm. Maybe that's what my carefully guarded savings could be used for. I could live beside a forest and raise chickens or something. As long as I was far from any hunter compounds, I'd probably be fine. As I lay on the grass, I watched the people go by. It was like I was invisible. No one seemed to even notice I existed, except the odd, curious, friendly dog and their apologetic owners. Maybe canines just really liked me. I wondered if the alpha would be offended by that thought. Why couldn't I get him out of my head? It seemed to be getting worse, not better. At first, this place was so confusing I had barely been able to think at all as I tried to figure out what I would do. But now that I had established routines, he kept slipping in. What are you thinking so hard about? Dan asked as he came and sat beside me. Or should I ask, who? I guess you should. It's who? The alpha? What? I asked, my head shooting up. In the couple of months we'd been friends, I hadn't told him specifically, had I? He smirked. An educated guess, and I just confirmed it? Yup, that you did. He said, your secret's safe with me. So let me sum up what you've said, and I've inferred you're minding your own business being a slave. He began, and I wanted to correct him on my position among the hunters, but then realized he wasn't that far off from the truth. My family had been an abusive sham, and then you bump into an alpha mutt, and he looks deep into your eyes and says, mine, and kidnaps you. Then he spends all his time growling at you because he's pissed off he's made it to someone who's an enemy from the other side of all the conflicts. And then you gradually wear down his defenses and convince him to let you leave. Well, that guess was creepily close to the mark. I'd already noticed Dan always seemed to know too much. It had something to do with his age and experience. I figured Lydia seemed way too intuitive. To something like that. But he wasn't that bad. The part where you lose me is how you convinced him to let his mate go. Werewolves are quite territorial. From what I've seen, I made a deal with him to give him a chance. Then I said something cruel, and he pretty much sent me away. Oh, he probably hates me now, but I can't get him out of my head. I doubt he hates you. He's probably been moping around this entire time. I glanced at him. Do you think so? He shrugged. I've met more than one wolf in my time, and that's usually how they are. Quick to get angry, but just as quick to forget. I sighed as I leaned back into the grass. I don't want to give up the little bit of freedom I've gained. He shrugged. If you do decide to try to make it work, you'll be giving up some. With his status, you'll be vulnerable, so that means you'll need protection. I can imagine, but I'm sure he could have kept you there against your will forever, so he's at least got some self-control. I can almost guarantee he'd rather have locked you in his prison than let you leave with only one female werewolf for protection. I glanced at him. Are you trying to convince me to go back? No. I've got no stake in this whatsoever. No stake? Huh? I thought you wanted me to meet your queen. He shrugged. Not that much. Like I said, not going to force you. I guess he didn't force me that much. Either. Sure, I had been locked up, but only until he decided I wasn't a hunter threat. And like Dan said, he had let me go. You'd be the only one who could decide that. I flopped my arms out. Maybe I should go back just to see if I was wrong. He shrugged. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a lot of help. Actually, this is helpful. It's nice to talk to someone who isn't 100% Team Alpha. For what it's worth, I think your wolf friend is genuinely worried about you. Too. I guess she is, but her loyalties are mixed. That's the problem with sharing friends with the ex problem. He's not my ex, because we were never a thing. No? His voice was doubtful. No? Well, you'd be the one to know that too, wouldn't you? Yes. If you ever decide you want to go back, I'd be willing to help you get there. I inspected him. He was reclining against a tree, looking completely relaxed. What's in it for you? Well, besides the fact I'd like to help you out, mostly entertainment value. Although I'd be lying if my queen wasn't asking us to make more friendly associations with other sorts of supernaturals. Wouldn't hurt to have good relations with an alpha. Is that why you first talked to me? I hated being suspicious of everyone, but it was hard not to be. Nope. I thought you were just an ordinary, cute, sad human at that point. All the rest was just a lucky surprise. I wanted to be annoyed, but it was difficult to with him. I'll keep your offer in mind. Maybe going back was the only way to move forward, one way or another. Devon. There was a knock on my office door. I called permission to come in, and my brother pushed the door open. Hey, Devon. Ray summed up all the info we've gathered on hunter activity, and I offered to bring it by since I was coming this way. I'd noticed that my brother came more often in place of my Gamma and Delta. They probably thought it was safer, or maybe the task fell on him as Beta, or as my brother. I didn't know, and I didn't call them out on it. Thanks. No prob. Hey, do you feel up to doing something? I don't know. Anything besides work one of these days. It's been a long time since we've done anything, and I know you're the alpha, but you're also still my brother. Nothing changes that, right? And Sylvia wouldn't want you to be isolated. If she were here, Isahed, I didn't have an interest in doing anything. Even if I did, I didn't want to be around anyone in case my wolf got agitated. There's too much to do. Oliver knew I was lying, but he didn't argue. We did a lot more pretending that we believed each other's lies in the past months. He was right. Though, Sylvia would have pestered me into being less antisocial. She was a lot like Oliver in temperament, but my wolf had a softer spot for her. If we could just make a breakthrough in the case. I eyed the folder Oliver placed on my desk. If there was anything of real value in there, I wouldn't be getting a report that had told me straight out and we'd be on our way to rescue Sylvia and her mate. Mate, I hated the word. My wolf howled for hours in my head. You talk to Sarah sometimes, right? Oliver was hesitant in his response. I do. How are they doing? We both knew I was mostly concerned about one. He chose his words carefully. From what I hear, they're both doing just fine. More meaningless platitudes. I growled, unable to help myself. She's doing well. She's got friends, a job. From what I hear, they have movie nights together. It was the most I'd heard in all these months. There was pity in Oliver's eyes. She's safe, and it sounds like she's doing well. That's good. I meant it, but I still had the inclination to force my way into whatever she had built. Whether she wanted me there or not. Maybe Oliver trailed off, and I focused on him. His breathing was a bit fast. Was he nervous? What is it? He swallowed audibly. I'm not saying now or anytime soon, but maybe you should consider ending your connection with her. My wolf reared to the surface, and it took all my concentration to hold him back from demonstrating to my brother just how much he hated the idea. Oliver continued speaking quickly. I know it's not what any of us would want for you, but this is eating you alive. Devon, you're not yourself anymore, even though your eyes are your wolf's gold, not your norm. You've lost weight. You're not sleeping. You're constantly drinking. He pointed to the half-full glass on my desk to highlight his point. Don't you think I know that? Then are you waiting for her to come back? I scoffed. No, she never wanted me. She has what she wanted. Why would she return? The bond? It didn't affect her. Not like normal. Then, I didn't want to admit my weakness out loud. But maybe I could, to my brother, if no one else. I don't know if I could hold back my wolf. You wouldn't hurt her. He sounded so certain. I scoffed. Wouldn't I? Oliver didn't know how dark my beast had become now that he had lost the only thing he ever truly wanted. He sighed. Well, if there's anything I could do, let me know. I will. It was another lie. Oliver left, and I refilled my drink. A few hours later, I made my way to the kitchen to find some mix. I'd run out of my preferred whiskey, and I was on to the vodka. The kitchen was deserted since supper had already come and gone, and I rooted around in the fridge. Then a sniffle managed to find its way through my drunken haze, and I turned around to see who was upset for a sweet moment, distracted from my own misery by someone else's. Megan was sitting in the pantry, red-rimmed eyes and puffy cheeks. She was generally a beauty, but even with bleary eyes, I couldn't miss what a mess she was. And it didn't take a genius to figure out what she was upset about. It wasn't as if we hadn't spent hundreds of hours together wondering about our mates and why we couldn't find them over the years when almost everyone else had found theirs. We were both still as alone as ever, and nothing I could say would make that better. So instead, I held out the bottle. Want to come have a drink? She nodded, and I walked over and helped her to her feet, although she was probably steadier than I was. Still, we managed just fine, and soon enough we were in my office, both sitting on opposite ends of the couch with drinks in hand. She'd stopped crying, but she was still puffy. Not that I was one to criticize people's appearances recently. What with my new resemblance to a vagrant, she took a big swallow of her drink and leaned back on the couch. Tell me what's wrong. Megan, I said, even though I was already pretty sure that I knew. She grimaced. You don't want to hear about it. You've got your own problems, right? I'm sick of my own problems. Well, I shouldn't be this upset when yours are worse. I don't think that's true. No? No? She downed the rest of her drink in one gulp and grabbed the bottle and refilled both our glasses. Her blue eyes welled up as they met my own. It's so stupid. I knew there were no guarantees. You know, I should have known better. How many times have I gone to a stupid pack function where there were wolves I've never met, and every single time my mate wasn't there? Why would this time have been any different? Just because I tried so hard to make it perfect? I knew better than to get my hopes up, but I thought maybe it was finally my turn. I'm sorry. She shook her head. You, of all people, don't need to feel sorry for me. Devon, it's not like your situation is better. She took a large drink. I'm sorry. I'm being harsh. No, please. You're the first person to act normal with me since she left me. Everyone walks on eggshells now. And it's a constant reminder of what I lost. I understand. I'm constantly on edge. But, strangely enough, my wolf seemed calmer now. Sitting here with Megan, he didn't obsess over her like he had with Amber. But our wolves were very close, and her proximity soothed him. I was doing it too. Wasn't I? Oh, I'm so sorry. She sniffled. You did nothing wrong. I wish you were still doing it, because then you'd be happy with someone. More tears from my words. She shrugged in the worst attempt at pretending not to care I'd ever seen. Well, if you want normal, I'll try. Devon, what are you gonna do? I don't know. Keep going, since I don't have much choice. Maybe I should just hand the pack over to Oliver? No, he didn't want it. You say, they needed me. I couldn't afford not to find my way through this. We always have choices, right? Even if they all suck. I laughed sardonically, and Megan's bitter chuckle joined me. We kept drinking together until I was too tired to do anything but pass out on the couch. Devon, the next morning, I woke up on the floor beside the couch. It took my half-awake brain a second to identify the scent of the fur-covered person who had taken over my usual location, and I relaxed when I realized it was just Megan. We'd never really done the sleeping over thing when we were together, so it was a new experience waking up near her, or anyone. I didn't remember her being in her wolf form last. I could remember, but apparently she has shifted during the night. Why are you a wolf? I asked her as I sat up, leaning against the couch. She didn't move in response to my question, not even her ears. But she did answer, because both my parents were wolves, and that's usually how it goes. You know that's not what I meant. I'm too tired to know things. Why are you in your wolf form? I'm hoping I heal from my hangover faster. If you must know, also don't look in your washroom before I clean it up. What did you do? I don't want to talk about it. It's your fault, since you're the one who fed me fairy juice. You know what? You're right. I don't want to know. She just laughed. And I did too. It still wasn't a very happy laugh, but it was the happiest one I'd managed in a long time. Over the next week, Megan and I started spending time together again, and it lessened the aching loneliness that had become my constant companion. It wasn't perfect. I still missed Amber. I still regretted my mistakes. I still had trouble focusing, but it was better, and even a slight reprieve was something I wouldn't shun. At first, we sat in my office drinking like the first night, but then we moved out into other quiet corners of the pack house. We watched a couple movies in my living area or played cards in a quiet corner of the games room. It wasn't all fun and games, or even mostly. She still cried whenever we drifted close to the mate question. And I still spent much of my days keeping my wolf in check and trying to function like I did before. But at least right now, we were both sidetracked. Megan tossed down her cards on the table and crooned, "Ah-ha. Game, set, match. Read 'em and weep." I have smiled and rolled my eyes at her. I'm not sure why you're so happy. No one would ever believe how much I beat the alpha. Aren't you alpha supposed to be the best at everything? No pressure? Huh? I can't even lose at a friendly game without having my position questioned? Obviously not, she said and laughed. But you're too good at most things. It sets up unrealistic expectations. So you're saying I should fail more. I said, although the word fail didn't sound as light as the rest of the sentence. Something like that. Her levity was gone. She must have caught something in my tone. What is it? Nothing. I'm fine. I repeated what I always said when people dared to ask. She shot me an incredulous expression. She didn't believe me any more than I believed me. What would the truth hurt? It was just me and Megan with no one else around to hear it. I've been failing. What? No, that's not true. Her face was all concern. I've been a terrible alpha. You're not. Devon, don't say that. I've been letting everything fall. The only reason the pack's fine is because of the way the others stepped up to cover for my failures. That's what pack is. Though, right, we cover for each other. Yeah, but my father never let anything get to him like this. I've always tried to follow in his footsteps, but it's like I'm walking in the opposite direction. Oh, Devon, that's not true. The pack didn't falter when your mother got sick because you were there to start taking over the role, just like Oliver and the others are doing to help you. It's nothing to be ashamed of. This mate stuff messes with everyone when it doesn't go the right way. No one blames you. I chuckled harshly. It's as much my fault as anyone. I said I was going to help you, and I didn't manage to do anything. She sniffled. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. Amber, my voice caught on her name. I never said it out loud anymore. Wanted something more than me. Nothing anyone could have done? Oh, Devon. She left her seat and came around and wrapped her arms around me. Her heat seeped into me, and I pulled her closer. She wasn't my mate. But my wolf didn't protest like he had when I noticed the way the social climbers had been eyeing me at the mate ball. Maybe because our wolves were so close. I didn't really know why, but what I did know is that I needed this break from isolation. Maybe Megan was the answer. I needed to look into it before I did anything rash. But maybe the time would come to choose a Luna who loved the pack and didn't despise me. I'd have to look into how it would affect my mate if I chose and marked another female without breaking the bond first. If it wouldn't hurt Amber, maybe that was the way to go. And if a rejection was better for her, maybe I could suppress my wolf long enough to get the job done. Maybe with Wolfsbane, Silver, or just drinking until my wolf could barely function first. I dreaded it. I didn't want to, but maybe I had no better choice. Megan patted my back like she was soothing a child. And on some level, it worked. We sat there like that for a long time, until the door to the game's room cracked open. An older couple quickly apologized and left when they saw how close Megan and I were. I saw only sympathy and understanding in their eyes, no judgment. The pack would understand my decision if I decided to go ahead with it. Megan tried to pull away from me, but I held her in place for a moment. Her lips parted like she was going to say something, and she searched my eyes. Devon, I'm not her. I know, and I'm not whoever it is that you really want. She scoffed. I've given up on that. I can't hope anymore. When she first left, I really believed the bond would make her reconsider. I hoped that even if she left, she would see she had choices and choose me from them if I just gave her time. But she's happy where she is. I gave her what she wanted. I can't hope anymore. Either Megan and I used to hope together. Now, maybe it was time to grieve those hopes. And we could grieve alone, or we could grieve together. I closed the remaining distance between us and brought my lips to hers.